Welcome to Parev-TV. It is Sunday, October the 18th, Sunday, 4 p.m. in New Jersey and midnight in Armenia, in Yerevan, where we are joined by Antranig Kasparian. He needs no introduction. He is an active member, a respected member of our community in New York, New Jersey area. Antranig, let's get to the point. How safe are you at this point? Because that's the main question I have for you. How is your safety? How has it been safe for the past 2 days or so? I know you were in Stepanakert.
Well, I'm back in Yerevan for the moment. I feel very safe. Obviously, we're going through a war, and this is not a war in name; it is a war in deed. And yes, being in Stepanakert or anywhere in and around Karabakh right now, it brings with it a certain amount of risk, but we all have to get involved in one way or another, and I've been helping facilitate media coverage by foreign journalists wishing to cover the conflict. So I think it's been useful work, helpful work that I've been doing along with others.
You know, you say this is a war indeed. Obviously, it is a very serious war for all Armenians in Armenia and throughout the diaspora. What is the difference hearing it from New Jersey in our comfortable homes as opposed to being in Stepanakert and not being able to connect with me as it happened yesterday morning because Stepanakert was being shelled?
Yeah, Stepanakert is being shelled almost every day. Yesterday, I was awakened at 3 a.m. and then again later in the morning by shelling of the city. And then again in the afternoon when you were trying to reach me, we ended up having to leave our hotel and go into underground bunkers and wait for the shelling to subside. So looking back on it, it was mostly an inconvenience. But at the time, of course, we were all alarmed and we had to take extra precautions. I will say that the shelling of the city of Stepanakert at this point is mainly designed to intimidate the population and to intimidate the leadership. I think at the outset of the war, the shelling had a different message and a different goal. The first few days, Azerbaijan was looking to take out specific targets, infrastructural sites, such as manufacturing sites or communication sites. Later on, they sought to take out symbols. Saint Ghazan Chetzots in Shushi, which is one of our national treasures, as well as certain other symbolic sites. I think the message there was that the Azeris can take anything away from us that they choose, that nothing is safe. But right now, I think the bombing is mostly general and indiscriminate, hitting random civilian sites just to cause damage and to remind us that they are there.
You know, we keep hearing of everything that is happening in the area, but we're so far away, so sanitized in our lives and our attachment to Armenia, especially when there's word from Moscow or from anywhere of ceasefire. You know, we get excited, we get encouraged, we hope that it holds. And yet the very last ceasefire, which is like a few hours ago, tell us what's happening. Is it maintained? Is it kept? Or are there violations of the ceasefire?
Well, I have to say that the Armenians here, and especially the Gharabakhzis, have zero trust for outside mediation. Their instinct is to rely on themselves, because they've been burned many times in the past by relying on outside powers. Now, I say this advisedly. Of course, the leadership of Armenia and Karabakh are seeking outside mediation. They have turned to the international community, but the first line of defense is ourselves. We've become very accustomed to disinformation tactics, for example. As soon as the Azeris, and this is mostly out of Turkey's playbook, I mean, let's be certain about this. It's kind of a standing joke when people say Azerbaijan, they laugh. What Azerbaijan? The moves are really directed by Turkey. And Azerbaijan seems to be behaving more like a servant or a colony of Turkey at this point than as an independent entity. But we laugh when they'll attack us, and the next moment you'll read in the newspapers or online that no, actually the Armenians had attacked Turkey, or will lose many civilian casualties, and you'll hear charges of Armenian genocide committed against Azerbaijan. We've learned to take this in stride, that disinformation is an integral part of their strategy. And more often than not, take what they say, turn it around, and you get closer to the truth.
When you speak about first line of defense, what is happening in the diaspora or can happen to support the first line of defense?
Okay, well, look, there are many things the diaspora can do, from raising awareness to raising funds. And it's all important. But if you're asking me, sitting here, with a sense of immediacy, I think the two most important things are to raise lots and lots of money for the war effort, which we're doing, but we have to do more. And the second thing is to find ways to influence Russia to get involved. I realize that many of our listeners, your listeners, are in the United States, and of course, we have to try to influence US decision makers and European decision makers. But I don't want to, throw cold water or rain on the parade. But in the near term, and right now we're fighting a war for survival. In the near term, the US isn't getting involved. They're preoccupied with their upcoming presidential elections. And the Trump administration has not demonstrated a desire or even an awareness of this conflict. Europeans, with the possible exception of the French, have been largely hands-off, giving us a lot of lip service. I think for our money, really Russia's involvement is the key. And I will say that we've been getting very worried and impatient that Russia has been not quiet. They've been far from quiet, but they have been trying to solve this matter diplomatically when Turkey has violated every norm of international diplomacy. As you hinted at earlier, Vartan, ceasefires get called and then they get violated within hours of being called. Twice there have been humanitarian ceasefires called so that the International Red Cross can come in and collect the dead bodies and sanitize the area. The International Red Cross is protesting that they're not able to come in because there's still shelling going on, not only in Stepanakert, but near the front lines. And that shelling isn't coming from us. It's coming directed at us from the outside. But to go back to the original point, Russia has been trying through diplomatic means to get Turkey and Azerbaijan to back off. And it hasn't been working. Mm-hmm. And what media and policymakers here have been trying to do is to convince Russia that Karabakh is only a flashpoint, that the larger game is for control of the Caucasus. And Turkey is now making a bid to become an influential player here so that it is no longer about post-Soviet space with Russia as the referee. It's going to become an interzonal conflict the way it has in the past, I don't want to go too far back to the Crimean War or to other incidents, but if you go back into different flashpoints over the last 2 centuries, the Caucasus has been fiercely contested, mainly by Russia versus Turkey. And we're coming back into that once again. Turkey is making a bid for control of the Caucasus, and Russia has been slow to wake up to that. They have been viewing this as a Karabakh problem. It is not. It is a regional geopolitical problem. And I believe in the last day or two, the Russians finally woke up, and you see various signals now that the Russians mean business and are ready to get involved.
You know, we spoke before about Russian involvement and how slow they are in moving. And I think it was you said they have a red line. They know they will, once you cross that red line. What is the red line, do you think, now for Russian policy in the area?
I think the main red line is 2 things, I think. One is active Turkish involvement in the Transcaucasian republics. Azerbaijan, they understand there are special ties, ethnic ties, but military involvement in Transcaucasian affairs is a no-no. And now that Turkey has made its intentions clear, the Russians are reacting in kind. That's number one. I think number 2 is that Russia is also alarmed over the type of involvement. It's not just that Turkey's getting involved militarily, but the way they're getting involved, bringing in Syrian mercenaries, bringing in Islamic jihadists, has really set Russia off, because Russia has its own problem with Islamic jihadists. It's had its problems with Chechnya, Dagestan, and other areas in its southern periphery, found within Russian territory. And there are reports already, about unrest in the Chechnya area. And there are reports still to be confirmed of jihadists in Azerbaijan having crossed the border into Chechnya. This, I think, is a second point of alarm, a second red line, if you will.
You are, I'm sure, studying, observing the Aliyev government. How stable is everything in Azerbaijan?
I'm following it, but I can't say that that is my main focal point right now. It is clear that Aliyev does have a rising domestic opposition. Mm-hmm. They've been able to keep them under wraps, by jailing them, by policing them. But Aliyev knows that his days are numbered unless he scores a victory. Mm-hmm. And this is why I think Turkey and especially Azerbaijan have been so persistent with this war. I mean, they've incurred massive losses, over $1 billion already in technical losses, weaponry that's been destroyed. Thousands of casualties. We're measuring 5,000 to 6,000 dead, many more thousands injured. Why are they continuing to go at this with such losses? Because they need to score a victory. Right. Without a victory, Aliyev becomes very vulnerable in front of his population.
Antranig, let me go to Zohrab Natsaganyan, the foreign minister of Armenia, who will be visiting Washington very soon. What is his mission, and what can we do to support that mission?
Well, I think we should be talking to the ambassador, who is the foreign ministry's representative in the U.S., to get a clearer picture. But all I can say right now is that the demonstrations that we've held have been largely visible, especially the Los Angeles demonstration, which brought 100,000, 150,000 out. Just as important, though, as the numbers is the media coverage. And I think we learned our lesson. When this war began, we were flat-footed. The Azeris and Turks had their PR firms lined up to do proactive messaging, and it took us a few days to react. But I think now, both through grassroots efforts, through the ANCA, Assembly, and others, and through individual work with PR firms, I think we're doing better at getting the message out. If these demonstrations continue and create a buzz in the media, that's the best thing we can do. And look, everything counts, but we've got to go after the big boys. Chris Bohjalian's op-ed in the Boston Globe, other people's op-eds that are coming out now in The Hill, Washington Post, other large newspapers. This has to continue repeatedly. We can't just sit back and say, okay, we got covered once, or we had an op-ed printed once. We have to keep going, and that will trickle into some of the discourse amongst decision makers.
You know, you mentioned in America we are getting ready for the election and also the pandemic. Tell me about in Armenia, what is the situation there? Because that's too a very major concern.
It's very difficult here. Coronavirus cases have certainly been on the rise, and that's no surprise. In a war effort, people come out of their normal routine, and sometimes are less careful about their personal care, etc. Wartime is a difficult time to maintain personal hygiene and personal discipline. So we've been fighting against rising cases of the virus, and my guess is that Azerbaijan is also fighting, and Turkey's already been a basket case. As we know, internationally, it has one of the worst track records in containing the virus. It is a very difficult time, especially on our side, I will say, because the Armenian side has demonstrated time and again that we value life, and we value the life especially of our own citizens. You cannot say the same for our adversary. I hate to say this, but part of Azerbaijan's advantage and Turkey's advantage is their utter contempt for their own people. They are throwing human shield after human shield at us because their people are expendable to them. So I would expect if we're having trouble with coronavirus there, they're just letting it go.
Antranig, one headline in today's report said that the Artsakh Defense Army is ready to provide humanitarian corridor for surrounded Azerbaijani troops.
Yes.
For surrounded Azerbaijani troops. What is your take on this matter?
Well, I think that has a dual effect. Yes, it sort of indicates that we play by the rules, that when you have an enemy trapped and defenseless, essentially prisoner, that you give them opportunities either to surrender or for egress. But I think it also carries a certain military significance as well. It's a way of signaling to the Azerbaijanis that we've got you.
Yes.
And I don't want to be boastful because this is a fierce war and it's not ending anytime soon. But after some minor losses of territory in the south, it looks like we have recouped some of those losses by enhancing some of our defensive capabilities. So I will not be surprised if those humanitarian corridors are designed in the south to let Azeris escape through Fizuli back into Azeri territory. Because if my reports are correct, they can lose dozens or hundreds of people if we decide to go after them. And we may end up going after them.
Antranig, հայրանոբիդի հարցնեմ հաջորդ հարցումս որքան տարածություն գրաված է Ադրբեջանը։
Ադոր մասին ավելի ճիշտ է չխոսիլ պաշտոնական աղբյուրներու վրա պետք է հենի։
Okay,
Պաշտոնական աղբյուրները ամենաճիշտն են։
Լավ պատասխան է դիգա։ Եվ ինչ է կարևորը ժողովրդին, դուք ասիք այդեղ գտնվիք Ղարաբաղ մեդիայի խորհրդատու եք կամ ասեք ինձ հայերենով եթե գրնակ բացատրել ձեր կորձը ինչ է այդ շրջանի մեջ։
Well,
գրնակ չպատասխանել, հասկանալի։
Գրնամ պատասխանել, նախ եւ առաջ Վարդան ինձ լավ գճանչնաս ես անցյալին ժուրնալիստ էի, լրագրող էի եւ Ղարաբաղի առաջին բادرազմին բավական երկար մասնակցություն բերած էի որպես լրագրող եւ հայկական մամուլին համար եւ օդար թերթերու համար այդ փորձառությունը ծևով մի հիմա գոկտակորձեմ որ եւս օգտակար լամ իմ հաստատությունս Թուֆենկյան հիմնադրամը որ դեղուն վրա ներկայություն է ամեն ծևով կփորձենք օգտակար լալ եւ մարդասիրական առումով եւ այս առումով եւ ասեմ օդար լրագրողները այստեղ մրցուններու պես հավաքվել են ինչու եւ առաջին անշուշտ որ Ղարաբաղը հիմնական թաշտն է պատերազմի Երևան Բաքու ասոնք երկրորդական վայրեր են հիմնական վայրը այստեղ է Ղարաբաղ բայց երկրորդը որ քիչ ծիծաղի պատճառ է այն է որ Ադրբեջանի մեջ անելիք չունին որտեվ Ադրբեջանը այնքան խիստ է եւ սահմանափակումները այնքան խիստ են որ լրագրողները համարյա անելիք չունին Ադրբեջանի մեջ մենք հարաբերաբար ավելի ազատ պայմաններ ունենք մեր նախարարները ազատ գխոսին լրագրողներուն հետ կդանենք իրենց տարբեր տեղեր որ կարենան անմիջական տպավորություններ վերցնել ինչ է մեր գործը այստեղ արտգործ նախարարությունը մեդիա կենտրոնը ստեղծած է որ կսպալվի օդար լրագրողներով թարգմանիչ կդրամատրեն, տարբեր օգնություններ կդրամատրեն, մենք այդ գործերում մեջ օգտակար ենք եւ կսադարենք։
Իսկապես գնահատելի արտասահմանի ներկայությունը ասենք կամ ուժը իօկուտ հայրենիքի Antranig տուն Նյու Ջերսի, Նյու Յորքի քաղաքի սույներեն մինես, գլխավոր սույներեն ասեն գահասկնաս մեր մտահոգությունը, մեր մտածելակերպը, մեր հետաքրքրությունը, ինչը որ պետք է այս փակմախոսքի պես մեզի սունունդ մտած, մեզի մտածել դաս, աշխատանք դաս, ինչը մարդահրավերը։
Առաջին կարծեմ ամենակարևորը այն է, որ Ղարաբաղցիները թյուրուն բարդվող մարդիկ չեն։ Մարդական ոգին այստեղ շատ զորավոր է եւ հինեն ի վեր թրոշմված է ժողովրդի մեջ as հողը պիտի չլքենք so if you're expecting this to end soon I doubt it it will only end soon if the Armenian side scores a victory then it could end soon otherwise դժվար որ Ղարաբաղի ժողովուրդը զիջի կամ զինաթափ լա Հայց, բոլորս այստեղ գիտակցինք, որ ասիգա դարբեր գարկի պատերազմ է։ Ընդհանրապես Ղարաբաղցին գծիծաղի Ադրբեջանի վրա, որտեղ Ադրբեջանը դարբեր պատճառներով լուրջ մոդեցում չէ ցուցաբերած աս պատերազմին։ Եվ լուրջ ասեմ, լուրջ բեդության It does not bear resemblance to a serious state that is mobilizing its resources.
Antranig գգորշունցնեմ որ քեզի։
Yeah, կարծեմ այստեղ քիծը քիչ մթուլցավ
Okay
yeah վերջացնեմ ասեմ որ գիտենք որ Թուրքիան այսօր յետևն է եւ ատոր համար շատ լուրջ խնդիր ասի գա պետք է նախ նյութապես սպիրտ պատրաստ լա ամեն զորակցությունները ոչ մեկ անգամ ոչ երկու անգամ ասպիսի նման զորակցություններ
Antranig գարձեմ պետք է փակենք որովհետև բավական խոսեցանք Antranig նորեն ուզեմ շեշտել ապահով եղիր եւ գարոցան քեզի շուտով վերադարձի New Jersey։ Հաջողություն,
Սիրով,
շնորհակալություն։
սիրով,
Այո, bye bye։
yeah, հաջողություն։